Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the podcast today, I have Leah Houston. For those of you that are new here and haven't jumped on this podcast before, and those who do, I don't know Leah, haven't met her before, but we're learning for the first time. So, Leah, thanks for jumping on board. And I'll let you take it away and do your background and who you are.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I was actually really excited that you reached out because, I started off as a doctor. I'm actually an emergency doctor. I practiced medicine for 10 years and I experienced this friction with credentialing. And it actually was more than friction. There was an identity theft thing around my professional identity, and there was fraud committed, Medicare and Medicaid fraud. That led me to realize how big this problem was and led me to want to figure out how to solve it. So I had to learn how to do tech after having been a practicing doctor for many years.
Oh, wow. So was that fraud that committing insurance fraud using your credentials for claiming things, or what happened?
Well, so in order to practice medicine, at least here in the United States, they legally have to check and verify that you actually are a doctor, that you actually went to medical school, that you actually have a license. And that process is currently 4 to 6 month manual verification process where they actually call my medical school and say, did she actually graduate? And then they write down on, they have software solutions for it, but it's basically software that's replaced the notepad, a lot of them.
Okay. Oh, well, I didn't know. So what was the fraud then? Just something that sounds interesting to dive into
Yeah,
for a
so
second.
I was working for a hospital, and as part of the process for onboarding for a hospital, we have to sign a contract, and embedded in that contract says we have the right to bill under your name. And after I left the hospital, whatever processes that were in place that were billing under my name weren't turned off.
Oh, okay.
And so they said that I was supervising a nurse practitioner, which is, mid-level provider that sees patients and often reports to the doctor, and we collaborate on how best to move forward. But they were saying that I was supervising that person, but I wasn't, and I was no longer licensed in that state. So it made it look like I was practicing medicine without a license. And that's fraud.
Oh, wow. That's a tricky spot to then be in, because they may have been doing it knowingly. I don't know how the whole story, just speculating here. You assume they may have been doing that knowingly if they know you're not there, just so then she could look like she's working but be autonomous. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. That's an interesting spot to have put you in then. Was there any ramifications from that?
Well, I did have to reach a settlement agreement with them because I had to have it reversed legally. I mean, it was an issue with the federal government.
Oh, wow.
And I also lost many months of income and all of that stuff. So they had to kind of, rectify that.
I can imagine there would have been a bit of grief going along the way and having to deal with that as well, and the headache.
Yeah. In the US, we also are oftentimes in debt. So I was $300,000 in debt, paying $5,000 a month towards that debt on top of my rent and everything else. And so I wasn't working. So it was a pretty difficult time.
And was that one of the main things with the credentialing that sort of pushed you into the other direction, or is it just the experience that you had in that other career?
Well, I had experienced the 4 to 6 month and the repetitive entry of the same information and asking for the same things over and over. And I was like, why is this happening? And then when this identity theft thing happened and I put the two and two together and I realized they were related, and then it wasn't just a problem for me, it's a problem for both doctors and systems alike. They would like to have this friction reduced. So it was kind of part of me, this is how entrepreneurs think. They think there's some reason that this happened. I think that the fraud happened so that I could go fix this because it's still a big problem.
Raised the problem, you had first-hand experience, you knew that. And then, if that's happened to you, how many other people is it actually happening to?
Many, because they call me and they message me now because they know, a lot of docs understand that I'm one of the docs in the credentialing and, Medicare, Medicaid, insurance fraud world.
And they share that story, because I can imagine a lot of people may not even know that's happening to them.
They don't, and that's the thing. So the only reason that I was made aware was because I had moved hospitals and I had let my license lapse. So most doctors just keep their licenses forever. So my license had lapsed for a few months. And so I got a letter in the mail. So most doctors, if you always renew your license and you never check in and revoke your credentials, and it's not an easy process to do that. It's hard to you have to go to every single insurance carrier. You have to go to the PCOS website on Medicare and Medicaid and check. It's not simple.
There's probably a lot of file boxes that have to take the paperwork out of, considering what you said earlier, how old school it may be in certain areas of in the departments there. So what was your approach then? You had that epiphany, you're like, all right, there's a problem here. I've gone through this. What was your approach to then starting out and jumping into the market and trying to solve that problem?
Well, I had lived in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, so like I knew a lot of people in the tech world. And when I was telling them about this, problem and this potential solution, they were like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely something that we can help you fix." So it was really kind of networking with people around the idea at first, and finding, some people to help me, scope it out, design it, build it, raise money, things like that.
So you've gone through the whole gamut. So you've actually been able to raise for the business?
Yeah, so in the US, we have multiple different ways to raise money through the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. There's a tool called crowdfunding, where you can raise money from the crowd. And so I did that. And I raised money from doctors who want this to be solved for themselves. So there's 600 physician investors who are also owners of this product and have helped to drive, the design, the development, etc.
Oh, well, that's a great outcome there. So 600 of effectively customers that are saying this is definitely a need. So you got that sort of product market fit. You know that they're interested. I imagine being in San Francisco and the Valley there, talent wasn't hard to find to get you started and planning on the design and what you needed to do?
Well, I closed the fundraising round just in January of 2020.
Oh, okay. So you had a global challenge to deal with.
Yeah, actually, no. It was actually, opened it in January
Okay.
2020 and it closed like later in the year. And so it was like I was raising money and then COVID made it actually hard to actually meet people in person. So everything we did remote for the first like almost 2 years. So yeah, so I did find a remote team to work with, you know, but it was a steep learning curve, let me tell you.
Okay. Were they like people in Silicon Valley or ex-tech founders or part of startups? Were they an offshore team? Like, what did you go with?
Well, so this is the interesting thing. Everybody's like, you need to find a technical co-founder. If you don't have a technical co-founder, you're toast. You're smoked. And so I found a person who, said, hey, let's do this together. And we worked together for 6 months. And the thing that was supposed to be done in 6 months didn't get done, and so time is money. At one point, I switched and worked with a different person. We did work with dev shops. I tried it all. It was a very interesting experience. And we actually ended up having to throw that original product in the trash because it was poorly architected.
Not unsurprising from our own experience. We have a phrase of projects that we work with. They're called rescue projects, which is exactly that situation you've been in. And that's probably half of our work. And it's been like that for over 10 years. So we're not scared to take on someone's work because it doesn't sound like you did this, but a lot of people jump into things too fast without planning and knowing exactly what they want to build or how to build it. They just start building. You were meant to have the support to help you do that through that technical founder. But from the way you said, where if it was done in 6 months and it didn't get delivered, it was meant to be done in that deadline. Was he sort of like an engineer, or was he sort of like at a CTO level where he hadn't been on the tools for a long time, so he wasn't a competent programmer?
He had been a senior engineer on several teams, which was why I
Okay.
was surprised,
Yep.
And it's kind of like, you want to build a house, you hire an architect, but that architect has only built industrial garages,
It's not a perfect fit.
and they say, I could build a house, but they have never done it before. And the thing that I learned about software development that I didn't really understand, it is like building a house in the sense that like building a house from scratch with no architectural drawings. So like you kind of have to build everything as if it's never been done before. And oftentimes you're using materials that have never been used before. And you're just, the first people that decided to use PVC piping instead of copper piping, and, the first people that did 3D printing, houses and things like this. So it's kind of like building something that's never been done before with materials that have never been used before, And everybody that you meet has some level of subject matter expertise, And so the person that I was working with was super good at DevOps, super good at, decentralized identity, but not so good at database architecture. And so instead of understanding that and phoning a friend or bringing in a resource for that part, he
Hmm.
just kind of gave it a try and didn't do such a great job, you know?
In the developer world, you've got sort of the way I see it is there's a split of type of personalities. You have people that are a bit more open and can talk to people. They're the ones that get promoted to managers and product owners and product managers. And then you've got the ones that are a little bit more reserved. They end up being your developers. They don't generally speak to clients, but then they end up getting really good at a certain skill set. And then wherever they work, they get pigeonholed in that area.
Right.
So that person may have been the DevOps lead at all these businesses and never actually worked on the code base outside of very early junior days or probably like database design classes at uni. Like it's hard to get someone that what they call full stack across everything.
Right. And unfortunately, people claim that they are. And
Yep.
that's the bigger problem, in my opinion. Coming from the house of medicine, I'm an emergency doctor. You're stabbed in the chest, you can't breathe, I got you know. But if you have a brain tumor, I'm going to send you to the neurosurgeon,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to pretend that I can do neurosurgery. And the thing is like in the house of medicine, we are licensed, we are credentialed, and it's essentially like it's unethical to do to say you can do something and then not do it on top of
Mm.
like you're going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different in software development. I think people try to do stuff that they don't know how to do sometimes, which is not cool.
There's a lot of cowboy groups out there as well that just say things to make people agree to terms or conditions and get a project, then don't deliver. We've had clients that have come to us and then to get their source code released, which they thought they owned, they then have to pay 50,000 US to get that released to them after the project, and then to find out that it's no good anyway.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I genuinely think this person, he wasn't being nefarious. I think he thought he could,
Yeah.
and just got a little in over his head because he did do a lot of stuff really well. Like
Hmm.
I always had my own keys to everything. I always owned everything. And like when we went through that, people were like, oh, well, at least this didn't happen to you and that didn't happen to you. So I've heard bigger horror stories than the ones I've experienced, but so that's good.
It's good that you've walked out of that in a good spot, but having to throw things away when you've invested in it and you're trying to move fast and make every dollar count is it can be a bit demoralizing at times as well. I'm one of those people that can say I can do anything. If I don't know, I'll figure it out. But I've had to do that because I own this business and I've had to do that along the way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting work or projects and different things. So when you're in a organization and you're a developer or an engineer, you don't have all the experience of running in the multifacets that you need to, which he probably didn't have that experience and then probably couldn't support you in the other aspects of the business where you actually needed it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also very interesting. Like I've also learned that like when you find, like you said, that full stack person who not only can like, plan, architect, implement, when somebody can use any tool or can write in any code, that's kind of like my signal now.
Okay.
If somebody comes in and says, oh, okay, you decided to use Go, that's no problem. Or, oh, hey,
Yeah.
you decided to use this tool or that tool. Like when they ask you to switch your tools or switch your code or redo stuff, I mean, unless it really does need to be redone, a lot of people want to just redo everything. That's kind of usually a signal that I look for.
Yeah, and that's probably a positive thing to look for as well, because that means they're confident, they can work with it, they can understand it. Because effectively, once you learn one programming language, it's not that hard to learn the others. Syntax is different, but the concept of programming doesn't change. It's just you have to understand where do I put a semicolon or commas or how do I declare variables. Like not too difficult. It's like learning another language effectively. But having the ability to say yes, I'll work with this, even though it's not what I would have done, or oh, that's an interesting approach. I wouldn't have done it that way, but it works. Is probably that's the right mindset to have that person on board. They're open minded. They're willing to look and learn from things, and that's going to be more important than just the technical skill.
And I've also been really like wildly impressed with the tools that are out there now. Like, I think that if 5 years ago we had the tools that we had now and I had all of the capital that I had then, we would be in a very different situation.
Oh,
You know,
right
like,
now you could build it yourself almost. or at least a good prototype.
Well, so what's really interesting is like, you know, a good friend of mine who's also runs a big shop is he said, yeah, you can vibe code on the weekend, doesn't work on Monday. you
Yeah.
know, like, yeah, you can make something that looks kind of like it works on the front end, but like the stuff that made, I mean, basically they built as a prototype, and said it was production ready. And even though like, they claimed that they had like a Postgres database in the back end, but the
Yep.
way that the data was, was basically parsed JSON files, like dumped into a database that
Oh,
wasn't properly like, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
so,
Okay.
and in their minds, they're like, oh, we can parse this later. I'm sure that in their minds that's what they were saying.
Yep.
But like, like right now, the team that we're working with, like they're moving so fast. I'm like, how are you doing this? And it's because of a couple of tools that we use. Like the development team uses something called DevSwarm
Hmm.
that essentially is like AI product development in parallel, multiple features.
Yep.
Where before it was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then when that's done, then we're going to do this. And like the cycle was so slow and so long compared to where we're at now. And we have tools like PostHog that let me like see what my users are doing and see where they're getting stuck. And like the
Hmm.
feature flags are just easy to turn on and off. And it's game changing.
Yeah, we've been noticing clients over the past recently. I don't know, for the last few months. We've had one that's 5 months of development, 2-3 hours a night in these Vibe coding tools, and they built like an entire ERP. And in
Yeah.
their demos, it all works end to end. When we get the code and try and run it, there's just things are falling over. Things don't work if it's not done in the right way. Because we would build software so you can start from scratch. Like there's no data in the database, and it's just you can seed it and get going. Where these are you're iterating, so something it doesn't matter if what the zero state would look like, because this is now where I'm up to. So there's a problem with giving it to someone else and starting from scratch, as well as the code's a mess in the back end a lot of times. There's a lot of duplication, a lot of code that's changes and gets left behind, so it makes it hard to manage as well.
Right, right. And that's, I think, what's cool about the DevSwarm tool is that like it really manages the different branches and is able to protect the branches. And it's like, I mean, because when all this stuff happened, I'm like, all right, I need to figure this stuff out. So I'm like getting into Cursor and I'm like, we actually used Vercel
Yep.
to build our original product, the first prototype, which was really cool. But then we had to build the back end and
Yep.
like in a usable end-to-end way. So yeah, I mean, it was cool to kind of learn that. I learned a lot in that journey. It was stressful at times, but enjoyable.
I was gonna say, hey, how did you find diving into that world? Because learning to code without sort of that experience or understanding what people are talking about in that space, I can imagine it'd be a bit challenging or probably daunting if you haven't been in there as well. There's a lot of acronyms.
Right. I mean, the first time I went into Cursor and like pulled in our repository and like made a change and saw it, I was like, whoa, this is like really cool. But I had to like watch a bunch of YouTube videos to actually make it happen. I'm like, I'm not going to really learn how to do this, but now
Yep.
I just at least I feel like I understand the process and the workflow.
Hmm.
And like I now understand why the development cycles were so long
Yep.
and things like that before. So, I mean, I'm a weirdo. If I'm not learning, I'm not really happy. So, it was kind of cool to like dive into a new world.
Yep. I share that philosophy. I'm trying to consume as much information and content as possible. I learn about anything I can. So I share that. If there's something new, I'll dive into it and understand it. I was gonna say what those prototyping tools, what they probably allow you to do at the moment is if you're not using them like this, is probably to prototype what a new feature would look like or how the UI would come together, so you can better communicate that to the team. Because that's probably where the gap has always been, is people understanding what the client is asking for as requirements. Like how do you turn that into something that they aligns to what has been asked?
Yeah. And, I feel like people are like, oh, it does this thing. Well, it's like, well, the reason I wanted to collect that information on the front end is so it could be available on the back end because we need it for our business.
Yep.
It's not just so it like, so they're like, look, it does all these steps. I'm like, great. Like, where are those users? Do we have an admin dashboard or a way for me to look at it? And, oh, well, that's going to be a whole nother thing. I didn't know you wanted that. And it's like, okay, well, I didn't even know to ask for that,
Yeah, you don't
and
know.
like, I feel like a technical lead would have asked the question, well, why do you have this step in the onboarding? And then would have learned that there was a business need and would have like found a way to either mitigate the risk or like include that in the requirements or whatever. So
Yeah, and that's where finding the right people that can ask the right questions is important,
yeah.
especially if you've never been in it before. Now you've probably gone through it enough times, you know, to specify things to the nth degree. It's very detail driven. So unless the detail's there, things will go the wrong way.
And even then details are missed, you know? So like, we just recently did a environment upgrade and like our Stripe integration broke and we didn't notice it and for a couple of days and it's like, oh, people can't buy stuff.
It's
Yeah.
very hard. You can't cover every single possible base. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Have you had extra challenges being in sort of the medical space? Like, does the HIPAA compliance come into what you're doing, or is it not really there because it's not patient related?
Well, so what's interesting is there is medical information as part of our credentials. So they do drug test us. We have to have vaccination records as part of it. So we do have to keep a HIPAA level compliance, but it is really more personal identifying information. So as far as like just security, especially because we're using AI tools, we have to be very careful of that because there's extra risks layered in there. But there are also credentialing bodies and entities that can like sanction certain credentialing software solutions like NCQA really is the regulatory authority around credentialing for like insurance carriers,
Okay.
Things like that. So it is stuff that we have to think about. Our earliest version is being built to be compliant, but we don't have those stamps quite yet.
Yep.
But that's something on our roadmap.
Okay. Are you in the market at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah. So how long have you had it operational for?
So we just launched our usable version like last week. Actually,
Oh,
we
wow.
launched new advanced OCR feature. We had a beta that was kind of launched in the spring, and we got some feedback from users and iterated on that. But yeah, so we have, advanced OCR where it auto detects the credential type, it extracts the data, it aggregates the data, indexes it. And then we also have notifications for expiring credentials. The next thing we're going to be shipping is like a sharing functionality where you can share those credentials with hospital systems or medicine companies and,
Yep.
and stuff like that. And then the next thing we're building are the agents that actually do the credentialing for you, which is going to be the bigger thing that we're really excited about.
Has that been a pivot in the last 18 months from what you were originally planning, just because of how AI shifted?
No, I've been wanting to do
Oh,
that
okay.
since the beginning. It's just I have big dreams and not so deep pockets.
Always the challenge of every startup founder. Because I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that probably, the word agent wouldn't have been what you were wording it as when you started the product. Because it's only been like since, was it November 2022 when ChatGPT was released, where that started to take off.
Well, so there was always APIs that were in development. So it was always going to be API integrations. But yeah, I was aware that like agents were coming. And I said, okay, we'll do APIs to start. And then as the agents start to get built, like, we'll slowly integrate the APIs that are available, the agentic verification that's available. Someday we'll build our own LLM, but like things are finally at a maturity that you can do all of it now.
It's really come a long way in the last couple of years to allow you to do that and have that
Yeah.
autonomous sort of ability where the thing can figure out how to get to the path itself. That's really the big difference.
Yeah.
With the whole process you've gone through, have you had, what are some of sort of like the challenges you've had to overcome, like the bigger things outside of that sort of CTO co-founder where probably would have put a big speed bump at the start of the life of the product?
Having big dreams is awesome, but aligning the business goals with the technical roadmap has been one of the challenges. And then also knowing, especially as an early startup, knowing how much of your resources do you want to go into certain things. So like I was reading some startup book and it was talking about how like the Heinz ketchup company spent 3 years and like $20 million doing research on their new ketchup cap. And it was only on the ketchup cap.
Yep.
And they did all kinds of, prototypes and usability studies and customer research. And then finally they shipped this new Heinz ketchup cap and we all see it. It's with the upside down bottle and you can like turn it up and it squeezes and it doesn't make that mess that old cap used to have or the screw on ones that were all messy.
Yep.
So it was it was, it was a good investment for them, but I can't put $5 million into deciding whether this button should be this shade of green or that shade of green, right?
Yeah.
But you got to do a little testing and a little customer research and a little bit of A/B testing and usability research and stuff like that. And so, like, as an early startup founder, knowing when do you do full designs versus like just on a napkin sketch, because this is something that's an internal dashboard and not a front-facing feature, or when to do full designs with clickable prototypes versus just kind of design it and give it to the devs and don't do the prototypes and don't get the feedback before you iterate, like don't iterate it in the design stage. And it's like, because all of it's time and or money and or both, and like so I think that's been the hardest part, knowing when to invest time and energy into this stage versus that stage, knowing, when to put a little bit of effort from a design or development or research perspective before, going all in on something.
Yeah, it'd be a challenging thing to try and identify when you need to do that, especially at the start if you've never been in this space before. Over time, I'm sure you'll probably have that baseline in your mind saying, all right, this is internal, 20% design's good enough, and we can move forward with it, because then no one else is going to see it. It's going to be used by 3 of us in the office or whatever it may be. But then, yeah, if you're positioning it something new to the users, then it's got to be really clear, really detailed, because you don't want to put it out there broken or half-baked and have it come back with changes. The way we sort of approach is when we look at something, if someone's asking for a feature that's similar to something that else is in the market, we'll go look at the Ubers, the Facebooks, the whatever those bigger companies are, and say, all right, the way I sell it is, let's just look at what they do, because they spent more money researching where that button goes than you're going to spend on this product in your entire life. Like, right. It's incomparable. So if they've done the research and that's where they think how it should work, there's a reason for that.
Right.
Yeah, it's just get shortcuts where you can.
Well, like even in, again, probably from some startup book that I read, but like, where does Burger King go? Wherever McDonald's was recently putting a store, a couple blocks away. Same thing with Starbucks. It's like,
yeah, being first to market is a good thing, but it's not always the end goal. So if you can learn from others and then have that baseline in how to invest your time the right way, it's probably the best way to do it. And then you've also got, as the founder, you're going to have the other challenge of, am I spending my time in product design, or do I have to look at working on the business today? So am I doing marketing? Am I doing sales? Is it HR? Whatever other aspect it may be, becomes challenging as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other side of this too. I obviously really enjoy the product side and like, the design side and the customer research part, because I'm trying to really solve something for the first time from the physician's perspective, from my perspective. Most of the tools that are in the market that solve this problem are really just built for hospital systems. And, it's part of why doctors are frustrated and they feel like this is such an administratively burdensome thing, because they aren't considered the users of the product. They're considered the product, actually.
There's a lot of products like that in the market that serve one end of the relationship, but not both. And generally, if you serve the other side, you probably do better, because you actually take into account the people who end up using it or are more directly affected by whatever you're providing.
Right. And that's what, that's kind of what our angle is and why we're differentiating ourselves, between building it to solve credentialing from the physician's perspective, but also for the systems at the same time. And, leveraging AI automation and agents to do the busy work for you so that there's no more manual processes. And then also creating an opportunity for me to have some control over my data and take it with me, even if I move to different places, which no other system is doing that. So it's cool.
It's exciting to see the journey you've had. And now you bring in the agents to make it a bit more autonomous and bring in that like AI aspect. Is there anything else that's exciting on the horizon with where you're going with the business?
So this is something I don't share with very many people, but the original plan was to essentially create more of a community, an automated physician referral network, so that we could coordinate care with each other and essentially leverage our collective intelligence on par or better than large health systems. And for those who understand decentralization, it was really a DAO of doctors, a decentralized autonomous organization of doctors. And credentialing was kind of like a side thing that I needed to do to verify the doctors before they got into the DAO. And so the initial idea was really more about the community and about the organizational structure and about finding better ways to coordinate to serve patients without the friction. And so in the back of my mind, I still do have that vision as part of this, even though we've kind of pivoted to focusing more on the credentialing problem because that was a bigger problem. And now we have all these things that we can solve it with. But we still want to do these coordinated care networks, and that's still on our roadmap. Build payment engines for direct payment, work with large employers to kind of like create funding opportunities. Because in the US, like 70% of every dollar is essentially wasted. It either goes into the pockets of shareholders at large companies or it is like spent on administrative waste. 30% goes to pharma. Only 7% goes towards physician services. And even that 7% doesn't go into the pockets of doctors. It just, goes towards the facility that's, paying the doctor.
Yep.
So if we can create direct payment engines, then we can reduce the administrative waste. We can reduce the amount that's going into the ether of crony capitalism and friction and waste and all that stuff. And we can actually pay doctors what they're worth, with which right now there's been a a downward pressure on our reimbursement and our payment structure. And it's driving doctors out of medicine. I mean, there's a crisis all over the world with, physician talent. So we got to fix that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. It's a very important part of the societies we live in.
Yeah, so the long term, the direct payment engines, the decentralized networks of doctors, the coordinated care networks, those are all things that are kind of like, down the line.
It's exciting. There's a longer vision, and then you're serving the immediate need, which probably brings you immediate value as well. And that is a big problem to solve on its own, as it is. So if you get that right, then it'll lead you and give you the ability to move into those other avenues once you've got a business that's running, making revenue, has profit they can reinvest.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, Leah, it's been a pleasure having you on today, and thank you so much for the chat. If you want to let anyone know how they can reach out, if they want to find out more, or just reach out about and talk to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm Leah Houston, MD, across all socials, and evercred across all socials, or my evercred. Evercred.com is our website. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and X, and I try my best to reach back out to people. And then just, if you're a physician, sign up. Take a look. There's a free version for every practitioner. You get up to 10 credits for free. And I look forward to seeing what you think.
Cool. We'll add all that to the show notes, so then everyone can find that. Once again, thank you so much for being on the DevReady podcast.
Awesome. Thanks.